Ladies and gentlemen, shalom. Noble representatives of the ministries, of the national organizations, associations, and all the transport and public transport institutions. Welcome to the second session devoted to issues concerning development of the railway projects, especially focusing on the situation in Israel as well. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of UITP, but also all the international public transport community, I would like to sincerely thank the organizers, but also the sponsors for this excellent event and also the opportunity to address you this afternoon. We're basically going into details of the presentation. I would like to basically focus on key issues revolving a certain trends regarding public transport, elements that are building public transport as sustainable urban mobility. But especially I would like to also focus in later on during the presentation on rail solution, particularly light rail, which I understand is growing in importance in Israel, and combined together with the bus transport is definitely going to shape the future of both Israelis but also other European and world cities. So if you don't mind, I will start with a few information about UITP, because I'm not quite sure everybody is aware what we are doing. So basically, UITP is the only international organization devoted to issues of public transport, urban mobility. So we are basically gathering around 1,500 operators, concessionaires, authorities, and industry from all around the world. Basically, these are local, suburban, regional operators, authorities. So we basically represent the interests of the industry, but most importantly, we do provide them technical assistance regarding knowledge exchange, inspiring excellence, innovation, and so forth. So as you see, UITP is a worldwide association. We are working with we have members in almost every country in the world, what makes us a unique international organization. As I mentioned, we are present worldwide. Worth mentioning is in Europe, we have members in 500 cities, which is an excellent departure point for analyzing public transport, analyzing trends, focusing on the future scenarios and coming up with the most optimal solutions, how to solve the problems of urban mobility. Mission, as I mentioned before, representing interests of members, knowledge exchange, especially the trainings, events. I'm also happy I'm speaking today in Israel because it's a sort of a continuity. The first World Congress of UITP outside Europe took place here in Tel Aviv in 1965. So we've been present here all time long. We are proud to have a number of members in Israel as well. Yes, basically I won't go into details how we are working. Basically we are a huge organization divided into modes. So we do everything around buses, light rail, trolley buses, waterborne. We have a lot of thematic commissions. So we cover each and every aspect of public transport, from ticketing, smart cards, open data, to questions of security and so forth. So it's interesting. If you are interested, please take a look later on the webpage. Quite important as an introduction to today's presentation, the key topics we are working on, and basically these are we could define them as a key trends of both current and future urban mobility. So it's not only about the public transport, as you see, it's more about issues that are, going more deep, more technical issues. Intermodality is very important, interoperability, Transport economics, so how to finance public transport is extremely important in Europe, as you know. I believe in Israel as well, how to find the right, revenue strategy, fee management and so forth to finance public transport, not only to rely on the government funds, but also make a public transport a profitable business, which is definitely possible. And of course, we are very much working with the EU legislation, as we are the only partner of the European Commission and also United Nations, World Bank, to working with the public transport issues. So we do have the knowledge, expertise and capacity to guide and to propose, let's say, most optimal solution regarding public transport. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to rush forward because I understand we are a bit ahead of schedule. So focusing on a few key trends regarding public transport and smart urban mobility, also focusing, I believe, on the Israeli condition. With just a very few basic information you are all aware of, the urban challenge, as you know, more and more people in Israel as well are living, starting, settled in the urban areas, town urban areas. What of course means that it's not only good for the city economy competitiveness, but it's also unfortunately, decreasing the quality of life, given that urban action in the cities is growing, and the car ownership is also set, to double in the coming years. So congestion is unfortunately has grown to one of the most crucial challenges of every city has to address. The better municipalities, operators, which will approach the issue of urban mobility, public transport, and limiting the negative impact of the motorized traffic in the cities, the better they will develop, this more smart and sustainable they will be in the future. As you see, of course, the question of an energy, I remember there was representatives of the Ministry of Energy, so that's very, heated as well discussion, especially in Europe and all around the world, how to shift away from conventionally fueled vehicles into a direction of perhaps electromobility, which is, for the moment, one of the most promising one. Of course, we are, public transport, without any doubt. I very much like this illustration showing why public transport is important in urban mobility. It's not only about buses, it's especially about the light rail, suburban rail, and so forth. The possibility, to maximize the capacity and to make cities, more pleasant place to live, basically. Of course, it's not only about public transport. It's not only about buses, or it's not only about trams, waterborne, funicular, whatever. It's about combining different modes and make sustainable urban transport intermodal. That's basically the most important trends we've been advocating for. And basically also walking, cycling, and so forth. I understand the Telo fund system is working quite well here. And so I'm sure you understand. Now, quite important thing, how to basically, before going into details about different modal aspects, how to achieve, sustainable public transport, how to get to the stage where our cities will be a more friendly places to live, and we won't stuck in a traffic jams and lose millions of dollars for our economies or our companies. So basically, of course, it's, as I mentioned in the beginning, finding the right founding mix, how to finance public transport. Another thing is, of course, a better legal framework behind public transport. So definitely build a strong coalition, political coalition, driven, of course, by ministries, local governments, in order to, put all the stakes into an urban mobility and make it the first mode of choice for citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, UITP, as a global organization with 130 years of existence, we've been analyzing data ever since, and we came to a very simple conclusion that the basis of a balanced traffic system, all the balanced traffic system rests upon a sort of three key pillars. One of these is, of course, it's not only about the public transport, buying new vehicles or building new roads. It's about integration of different policies, property management, land use, combining it with the PT planning. That's very important that the chief architect and the urban planners are meeting together with the operator authority and transport authorities to discuss the master plans, sustainable urban mobility plans, integrated transport plans. So that's the first pillar. Second pillar is, of course, parking and spatial aspects. Both UITP and the whole public transport sector is not against cars or the car industry. It's more about limiting the negative environmental, spatial, economic aspects of a motorized car traffic in our cities. So it's important how to manage the parking policy, how to discourage people by earmarked revenues, polluter pays, user pay, and so forth to use more public transport and less cars. And of course, the last thing is development of, as I mentioned before, intermodal choices of transportation as cars, walking, and so forth. This picture I like very much as well. It just very briefly shows you what sustainable and seamless travel is all about. So it's not about that we were using just a light rail system. It's a combination of, if you are thinking about the door-to-door mobility, you have to think about definitely different modes of transport. And as you see, that's the real alternative, because public transport, transport in particular, is based on the citizens' behavior. So if we want shape, we want help them understand how important it is and how easy it is to use public transport. For example, locating bus stops less than 300 meters from his home, then it will be much better. Integrated travel information ticketing, of course, that's common knowledge. Very recently, discussion about the open data, so the sharing operators or local governments, information about how transport is running and sharing it with the third parties, building applications around it. So all the ITS discussion is very, very hot as well. It's a part of the quality-oriented public transport. And financing, but if you don't mind, I won't go into details because it's a story for another presentation. It's just signalizing here that's a subsidizing by the government, either be it local or national, is just one part of the story. More and more municipalities are searching really a sustainable, so financially sustainable models of financing public transport. And it will especially be very important when you are thinking about the rail solution, which I'm going to begin to speak about in a second. And just introducing you the thematic of this session, a few words about decarbonizing urban mobility, for which rail solutions are so important to think about. The best way to decarbonize, decongest your city is to care for a modal shift. It means that, in Europe, for example, unfortunately, the share of public transport in major cities is only 15%. So it's nothing. I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen the statistics in Israel, whether it's higher or not. I don't expect it's much higher. But still, I think the decarbonization and, broadly speaking, electromobility could definitely help to get out, diesel engines or cars out of the city center, especially, and then put into track the electromobility and the modes that are electrically propulsed. Ladies and gentlemen, I was starting a bit about the rail solution, how the rail could improve urban tissue, urban environment. It's very simple. It's very simple graph, as you see. That, for example, if you see the light rail power supply, for the moment, this system is being tested in some German cities. It's very interesting to see how one mode of transport could be a powerhouse for different electromobility solutions, give it electric bike, e-cars, electric buses, of course. So basically going from a discussion of decarbonization to a discussion about electrification or electric mobility, that's the way forward definitely for public transport, at least in a foreseeable future. Moving to the core parts of this presentation, ladies and gentlemen, I also asked by the organizers to focus a bit on the European experience and beyond Europe to show you the case studies and elements behind the smart urban mobility and what are the necessary steps we all, as a public transport professionals, be it authorities or operators, have to think about and then hopefully implement to move the public transport forward and decongest our urban areas. Just two slides about the bus, because it's also, I understand, quite an important element of a public transport in Israel. As you see, for example, in Europe, we have already a Euro 6 norm. I understand in Israel we have a Euro 5 norm, which is also very much advanced regarding the CO2 emissions. But unfortunately, it's not the case of every public transport city or system to use such an advanced Euro 6 norm. So it's just to show you that this is also a sort of a future. In Europe is unfortunately driven by the European Commission regulations and directives. So it definitely has sense to think about also CO2 emission and how it works within the sector. Another few bus trends, so both producers and authorities are thinking very strongly about alternatives to diesel fuels, CNG, LNG, biofuels, which are very harshly discussed right now in the European Union. But also we have electric buses, super capacitors, and so forth. So seems like this technology for the moment is still a bit premature, but we shall see what the future will hold. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a quite important part of this brief lecture, just to show you a few key advantages, how to build sustainable public transport, which has as a backbone a light rail system, definitely a tram system. This just a graph that shows you how important it is to think in first terms. If you are thinking about choosing a right mode of public transport, think about capacity. Well, capacity, you see, if you compare different modes of transport, it's without any doubt, if you're thinking about urban mobility terms, that's give it a light rail or tram, however you name it, having now a possibilities of carrying 500 plus passengers, you see easily how many cars it can eliminate from a center, from a downtown of a metropolis, like for example Tel Aviv, because I'm aware of the project that is being run nowadays, and hopefully once it will be finished and succeed. Just a few words about LRT advantages. Please, of course, don't understand me wrong. As I'm talking about LRT, I want to say LRT is a very interesting choice for a backbone of a transport project, of a transport system. Of course, it has to be fed by a very well-developed and hopefully electrified bus network, BRT network, cycling, and so forth. But as a backbone of the system, it definitely has very few, if any, competitors. Urban rail systems, I would say, is definitely, as I mentioned before, a key element of a multimodal urban mobility. Not only because of the capacity, it's also about a very stringent environmental noise pollution standards that are more and more implemented around the world. Of course, very nice thing, versatility, intermodality, in a sense that, for example, if you go to Dublin, is a very good example. I'm sure some of you heard already, how light rail system is perfectly coherent with the park and ride facilities, bike and ride facilities. For example, in Kassel in Germany, where I had a chance to visit the system as well, intermodal passenger stations where the light rail, there's a feeding row of buses, and then you have one platform, not different bus stations on different parts of the city. It's one station that's communicating different modes, and that's definitely a way to go forward regarding development of a system. As you see, there are lots of light rail systems in the world, and there are lots of very good examples how to do it and also how not to do it. I think quite important regarding light rail is this key term of transforming the city. It's true that it's been shown, and not only through statistics and data, but especially if you are visiting a light rail city with a operating light rail system, it's definitely, you see that this system has a huge power to transform metropolitan areas. How's that? Of course, we think at UITP, while speaking about public transport, especially thinking about the quality of life for the citizens, help them, to go from one place. Public transport is not about, providing passenger kilometers. It's a deliver a lifestyle services. So that's very important to understand. Improve the urban environment. How, for example, if you go to Nantes in France, the light rail system there has been built, to reshape the tissue, to reshape the urban environment, to make it, even regarding design, nicer place to live, also to the very important issue of downtown center access. So you are mobilized, sometimes marginalized populations within the cities, and you are, carrying them into a center or into a leisure, sport, works, university, academic facility. So it's also important. In some cases, of course, in cases of a lot of, for example, Central and Eastern European cities, I've been working since some time now with Central and Eastern Europe, that I'm responsible for. You go to a Romania, especially Poland, but also cities of Baltic countries, Tallinn, Riga, Vilnius. You see that public transport based on LRT is being an element of a very strong city branding. So that's also interesting to see. It's not only economically feasible regarding capacity, but also give a huge image boost to the local authorities, which are very often proud of. Re-landscaping and so forth, I mentioned about it. At UITP, very often we use a phrase, dig and shake, because if you are building a network of 10 to 12 kilometers long, light rail network, then you have to think that you have to move an area of around 50 to 20 hectares. So it's a huge work. So it's not only about putting the light rail network, as you have a chance to change even more than putting just simply a light rail network and catenaries. So that's a great idea to do something more than public transport, engage local communities to help them. Social consultations is a very major project in Europe. Citizens are taking part in shaping the network, helping part for the city planners and architects to help to shape the light rail into a direction that will be most optimal for their needs, actually. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the few last slides about LRT and city transformation, which I could name as elementary. I mentioned before the capacity per passengers per hour per direction is really a norm, and the potential that a light rail has, together with another modes that are feeding it, or complementary modes. It's a very powerful thing to change the landscape of a city. I don't have to tell you about how well, light rail network is integrated into dense centers where passengers or walking people in a city centers perfectly know where the trams are going, and the rate of accidents is really minimal. Efficiency, I don't have to tell you about the high commercial speed, because trams very often more and more are being built on the dedicated line, so they are separated from the motorized road traffic, which give them a supremacy regarding urban transport and regarding speeds, punctuality, and so forth. I was also asked to give a lot of examples, but given that we have 400 plus systems and more than 150 systems in design, I mean, I could also give you brilliant examples of a lot of cities that you probably know or visited. For example, Krakow, Warsaw, Prague, Szeged, Oradea, Romania. Regarding public transport, excellent things are happening in the Gold Coast in Australia, in China. Regarding, for example, property value along the corridor, you can go to Dallas, to Portland, to see how the light rail system has evolved in the direction of bringing, a real property value on the level of a metro, like in London, the highest prices are next to tube stops, and the same is in the US, where the light rail is driving upwards the prices of properties and land value. Not to forget, shifting a bit farther to another very interesting project that's being currently run in several European cities and beyond, is a tram train project, which is, that's the best example of sort of interoperability, as you see, for example, here the Karlsruhe and Saarbrücken examples, where for example, Bombardier is running a quite successful operation, so both as a regional train as a urban tram. So I believe in the metropolitan area of Tel Aviv, that could also be considered one of the options to implement. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, there are a lot of different aspects than the capacity. There's also aspects of a costs. OPEX, CAPEX, I don't have to tell you about, but given in need, the demand, the critical element is definitely, the capacity of the future demand, how to manage the future demand. If you are investing in either LRT or BRT, if you are sure the demand will be great, then of course, if demand is higher, then the LRT is definitely the option to consider. Just a few words about LRT, BRT, because I know that's also quite an ongoing discussion in Israel and beyond. I would say, of course, each has its own specification, merits. What we as an international organization, but also representing the sector, we're definitely focusing on the public transport, whether it's a discussion between BRT or LRT. We would like to see either both or one of them, but especially it's against the congestion. So each mode has to be, met a local criteria. Every city is different. Demands of each and every metropolitan area is also different. Of course, there is an overlap zone between a higher end of a BRT capacity and lower end of a LRT capacity, as you see from this graph. But nevertheless, if you see a system that's currently being based primarily on buses, and you are thinking about implementing a new, let's say, a mode of transport, then I definitely think, taking into consideration the quite extensive demands, thinking about, LRT, even a metro, which is currently undergoing a revival. Cities, very dynamically growing cities, compared to Tel Aviv, as name it, Warsaw, Prague and Bucharest, all of them are investing huge money, not only to buy a new rolling stock, but also to extend their lines, because that's where the demands will be met. I won't comment on this slide. It's just to show you that different ideas are. There's always a question of capacity demand. So there is a reserve, a capacity reserve. Whenever you are investing, have to think about the future management of the future demands are also important. Ladies and gentlemen, going to the end of this presentation, I hope you are still enjoying. It's just a few words about in reference to a general conclusions that we have. It's a common knowledge to say that we are living in an urbanized world, and how better the mobility is being shaped right now, the better the cities will function in the future. Also regarding planning, because as I mentioned before, if you don't have a integrated mobility plan, and you are thinking about in a model terms and a short midterm, then it won't help you to become a growing and prosperous city. Of course, we can have electrified buses, we can have a LRT, but if indeed a green jam is still a jam, so you won't change it by introducing, this or another propulsion system. Is indeed a smart traveling. It's about intermodality and scenarios, future scenarios. That's why, as a UITP, also agree most of you will go for a strong, model shift ambitions, because that's the most important. I think in public transport terms, then pushing people away from cars into the direction of a public transport, be it LRT or something else. It's a key requirement for every decision maker responsible with transport, particularly for public transport. As I mentioned, and this should be based on a public transport as a backbone of the urban mobility system. Once more, coming back to one slide I had, I would like to leave you with this slide for the end of the conference and just to ignite the discussion that will follow shortly afterwards. That the public transport, especially LRT systems and suburban railways, also I know the Israeli railways, which is part of UITP, also will be present here. As a question of equality. If we want secure equality, then we want to attend the passenger. We want to attract the new passengers. We want to retain loyal clients of a public transport. So I definitely recommend focusing on this political side, making a choice, wise decision, which mode to introduce, taking into consideration capacity, demand, costs, infrastructural possibilities, and of course, long-term political deliverables, which are also very important. And then, choose the right mode of transport and let the discussion begin. I hope it was fruitful. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer all the questions afterwards. Thank you.